أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So today we'll be looking at Redditch's book again. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So as mentioned, we're going to be looking at Redditch's book and essentially looking at the summary of various decision-making models, systems that he proposes. I'm very simply going to read from my book. The text is exactly the same as on your screens. So just to show, this is the text I'm reading right here. The mind within the brain. Right, so summary. Behavioral decision making occurs as a consequence of a number of different interacting systems. We have identified four acting systems: reflex, Pavlovian, action selection, deliberative, and procedural, and four support systems taking physical action, perception, situation, recognition, motivation. One of the remarkable things that has occurred over the past several decades is the convergence of different fields on these multiple decision-making systems. A number of fields have been examining how different fields on these multiple convergence of different fields on these multiple decision-making systems. A number of fields have been examining how different agents interact with each other and the world. Example given: human psychology, psychiatry, animal learning theory, robotics and control theory, artificial intelligence, and neuroscience, including both computational modeling and the new fields of neuroeconomics and computational psychiatry. One of the things that motivated me to write this book has been observation of these different fields converging in a similar categorization of decision-making systems, even debates within the field. Similar example is the value calculation within the search-based deliberative. So you're actually actively looking out for a specific object or feature, and catched action procedural, something that is built in and hardwired, right? So these are two debates running in the field. Are they separate or unitary? I have argued here and elsewhere they are separate, but the issue is far from settled. So he is of the opinion that they're separate systems. I am not entirely sure because I am still at the standing stage. Soon we'll be walking, inshallah. So evidence in favor of separation and evidence in favor of a unified value function. So we're going to look at the papers he references here, which is over here. We're going to look at these papers shortly. Okay. For example, roboticists have come to the conclusion that one needs multiple levels of decision-making systems. Fast, low-level hardware systems don't bump into walls, a reflex system, as well as slower search processes, slow but flexible, a deliberative system, and fast catched action processes, fast but inflexible, procedural system. Computer scientists studying artificial intelligence and computational neuroscientists trying to model animal decision making have identified these systems in terms of their expectations. Pavlovian systems create an expectation of an outcome and lead to an unconditioned action related to the outcome. So Pavlovian create an expectation of an outcome and lead to unconditional actions related to that outcome. Deliberative systems, however, search through potential futures, produce an expectation of the outcome, and evaluate it. Procedural systems directly evaluate actions in response of specific situations. So this is actually a really, really good summary that in fact I'm going to highlight this. This is a great point here. Pavlovian systems create an expectation of an outcome and lead to unconditioned actions related to the outcome. So that's the Pavlovian model. Deliberative systems search through potential futures, what could happen, produce an expectation of the outcome, what could happen as well, and evaluate it. So deliberative is a situation. Walaikum Assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Frozo. So deliberative is systems searching through potential futures, produce an expectation of the outcome, and evaluate it. Procedural, on the other hand, are systems that procedural system directly evaluate actions in response to specific situations. Okay, so very simple examples is that in terms of Pavlovian systems, they create an expectation of an outcome. So this will happen, and you have unconditioned actions, as in robotic, that lead to the outcome. I obey, yes, I obey. So it's all robotic, essentially. Yeah. And then deliberative systems, they search through potential futures. If not A, then maybe B. Produce an expectation of the outcome. So an expectation is made of the outcome. If A, then X. If B, then Y. And evaluate it. So this could be introflexion, which is understanding yourself. This could be realization, where you dwell on your mistakes and what you've gained. And this can also be gleaning from your mistakes as well. So there's a number of things happening. So human beings are the animals that do this the best. By animals, I mean scientific term here. Procedural, directly evaluate actions in response to specific situations. For example, in the morning when you wake up, you brush your teeth, brush your hair. You don't exactly put toothpaste on your hair or shampoo in your mouth by accident. That never really happens because you've built procedures. Now, similarly, learning theorists working in the fields of psychology and animal learning identify three systems. First, there's a stimulus outcome system in which unconditioned reactions associated with outcomes get transferred from being done in response to the outcome to being done in response to the stimulus. Think Pavlov dogs salivating in response to a cue that predicts food reward. So the outcome is not there yet, but the stimulus has triggered a potential or desired outcome, right? So if you remember when we were looking at cognition, problem solving, and thinking, you have the general state, then you have the desired state. So that's the SR, stimulus response connection. And in between, there's an idea of mediation happening between the stimulus and the response temporally. Right. Second, they identify an action outcome system in which animals learn what outcomes will occur if they take a given action. These actions are to achieve that expected outcome. Third, they identify. So, identify. So, animals learn outcomes will occur if they take a given action. These actions are taken to achieve that expected outcome. Third, they identify a stimulus response or stimulus action system in which actions are taken in response to stimulus. So the second and third systems can be differentiated by reevaluation and devaluation experiments in which the value of the outcome is changed online. Right, so as mentioned, we are going to look at some of these papers. But before we do that, I really want to speak about Should I do basal ganglia after? Basal ganglia. Da, 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 da. Yeah, we can do basal ganglia straight after this. Mhm. Yeah, let's do that, I guess. We'll look at the separate system. Then we'll jump onto basal ganglia and then touch on the hippocampus, inshallah. Right, so reference 92. If I go back here, this is the question we are focusing on today. Is the value calculation within search-based, deliberative, and catched action procedural system separate or unitary? Right, so 92. So first of all, we'll look at evidence of separated systems because Bredish here is of the opinion that separate systems exist when it comes to decision making. So let's pull up one of these papers. By the way, thank you to everyone on TikTok, Instagram Live, and YouTube Live. Kindly do like the stream and subscribe and join. The idea here is to essentially simplify complex neuroscientific theories which impact artificial intelligence, our day to day lives, and of course, understanding our mind and heart and soul more deeply. So, Jazakallah khairan for that. Right, so going straight into it. First one I'm going to look at is first and foremost McClure Cohen. So, time discounting for primary rewards. So now this is a time discounting type of model. So what is time discounting? If you remember from one of our previous streams, that is a concept of how much delay eventually leads to the desired reward. It's called delay discounting. Fact, let's quickly jog our memory here. Okay, so delay discounting. Delay, here we go. Measures how rapidly subjective value of a reward drops as the delay to receiving it increases, with higher rates indicating greater impulsivity. Neurobiologically, high rate discounters show altered function in reward valuation and cognitive control. So the ventral striatum and medial prefrontal cortex and cognitive control, which is your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex systems, often modeled using the hyperbolic formula. V is A 1 plus KD. Okay. Where is this? Okay. So V is present value, A is reward amount, D is delay, and K is a discounting rate. A larger K indicates steeper a larger K indicates a steeper discount curve, faster the evaluation of future rewards, which equals higher impulsivity, while a small K indicates better self-control. Right, so that makes sense so far. Okay, so let's look at this paper, McClure 2007 discounting. McClure 2007 discounting. Okay, McClure investigated time discounting for primary rewards, example given juice, to determine if the same neural mechanism involved in monetary reward discounting applied to immediate consumption. They found that ventral striatum activation in the brain is associated with immediate primary rewards, providing evidence for a dual system where different brain regions process immediate and delayed rewards. So let's go to ventral striatum activation here. Ventral striatum activation, particularly the nucleus accumbens, which is ACCN, I believe it's abbreviated. Central component of brain's reward system, heavily involved in processing anticipation, motivation, pleasure, and goal-directed behavior. It is activated by monetary, social rewards, positive emotional stimuli, and plays a better role in fear extinction, learning, and the vigor of motivated actions. Okay, so let's jump into the introduction of this paper very briefly. Let's see how this turns out. Images. This part here. Interestingly, there are some gender differences, which we will speak about some other point. But yeah. Check audio settings. Audio is fine. Why? Why is my audio not working? Should be working. Okay. Right. Yeah, it's working. All right. Right. So let's pull up the PDF. So this one is separate systems that exist. Yes. Okay. I need to take some notes here before we begin. Makes my life easier when I run this back. Rough. Right. So this is a question we're looking at here. So I'm going to look at this paper here shortly after. Yeah, give me this small. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, is the value calculation within the based search based deliberative and cache action procedural systems separate or unitary. Oh, I forgot to do something here. Before I go, evidence in favor of separation. So evidence in favor of separation. Okay, right. So what we're going to do is actually read into this text on the right. I'm going to minimize this one. Yeah, make this big. Change the wall. Before I do. Right, so previous research involving monetary rewards found that limbic reward related areas, such as the basoganglia, show greater activity when intertemporal choice includes an immediate reward than when the options include only delayed rewards. In contrast, the lateral prefrontal and parietal cortex, areas commonly associated with deliberative cognitive processes, including future planning, respond to intertemporal choices in general, but do not exhibit sensitivity to immediacy. The current experiments extend these findings to primary rewards, fruit juice or water, and time delays of minutes instead of weeks. Thirsty subjects choose between small volumes of drinks delivered at precise times during the experiment. Example given 2 milliliters now or 5 milliliters in 5 minutes. Consistent with previous findings, limbic activation was greater for choices between an immediate reward and a delayed reward than for choices between two delayed rewards. Whereas the lateral prefrontal cortex and posterior parietal cortex responded similarly, where the choices were between an immediate and a delayed reward or between two delayed rewards. So, consistent with previous findings, limbic activation was greater for choices between immediate and delayed than for choices between two delayed. Okay. Whereas the lateral prefrontal cortex, so I think this is key to actually highlight. Current experiments extend these findings. Right. Lateral prefrontal and a posterior parietal cortex respond similarly, whether choices were between an immediate and a delayed reward or between two delayed rewards. Lateral prefrontal cortex posterior cortex responds similarly, whether choices were between immediate and a delayed. Okay, interesting. Moreover, relative activation of the two sets of brain regions predicts actual choice behavior. Second experiment finds that when the delivery of all rewards is offset by 10 minutes, here, second experiment, so that the earliest available juice reward in any choice is 10 minutes. No differential activity observed in the limbic reward system reward related areas for choices involving the earliest versus only more delayed rewards. We discuss implications of this finding for differences between primary and secondary rewards. Hmm. Where are they from? Princeton, Massachusetts, Harvard, Carnegie Mellon, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, University of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I wonder how many of these are on the Epstein list. Anyway, 15 seconds time, 25 seconds. Right, empirical studies of intertemporal choice find that value declines rapidly over short run but slower rate over long run. Intertemporal choice, what does that mean? It means choice made within varying periods of time. After 5 seconds, I will give you £5. After 10 seconds, I will give you £15. And after 25 seconds, I'll give you £50. Right? After 5 minutes, I'll give you £150. So it seems that the immediate reward and the slightly delayed one shows more activation in the limbic system as compared to the further delayed rewards. And the reason I use pounds as an example is because it's mentioned here in the introduction, involving monetary rewards. Here, instead of money, they're using juice and water in this experiment, but classically, it's always been money. Probably heard of a term called delayed gratification. It's exactly what this is, or the very much misused experiment, excuse me, where children are told, hey, don't eat this sweet, wait here for 2 minutes, you get two sweets. And when they wait for 2 minutes, they get that extra sweet. So from one is two sweets after 2 minutes, and then the child is told, "Hey, wait for another 5 minutes, so you get five sweets." And very few children actually wait for 5 or so minutes, if I remember correctly. So it's quite natural. That's why, for example, a lot of these apps, when you sign up to apps and softwares that are not free, they give you a trial version. They give you 5 tokens or 5 tries or 10 free downloads or 10 free AI prompts or whatever the case is. And after that, what happens is then you're asked to buy a subscription. And when you decline buying a subscription, sometimes a prompt comes up saying, "Hey, we've got a 15% off special, by the way." And when you decline that, because they have your email and your number, they're going to reach out to you saying, "Hey, can you just like us on social media, and then we'll give you a follow, whatever the case is. So we will send you a discount code." So these are ways of not only winning customers, but this is what many have learned, as in business owners and psychologists and obviously computational neuroscientists, how to get a hold of your customer very simply. So yeah, that's how it is. Okay, so this is the equation. So according to a conventional function form for representing such time preferences is the quasi-hyperbolic discount function, according to which the present value of a stream of consumptions is as follows. So look, it's interesting how they're linking reward and consumption here, because from a consumer's perspective, you're probably getting rewards, and from a producer's perspective, they're gaining a customer or a consumer. And the consumer in of itself does not really realize that in the grand scheme of things. So when things like the JAP files come out, people's minds are shocked because all the companies that they so-called trust in and bank with and buy things from and do business with or business on, they're all under that one man's control. It's quite interesting how that works. So yeah. Anyway, so this equation where u is a utility function and discount parameter beta and delta are bounded 0, 1. So there's a loss and a gain. Discount parameter. Setting up parameters. Similar to Bisharo's model of reward and decision sensitivity, if I'm not mistaken. He looks at this as well. Let's quickly go there for a minute because it's fresh in the mind. Yeah. So participants maintain an attentional way. It's used to choose where to place. So parameters decision consistency. Pardon me, not sensitivity. I don't know why I'm using sensitivity. Decision consistency. That's what's being looked at here. Okay, and that's one of the models. So you have reward sensitivity, punishment sensitivity, and attentional focus. So decision consistency, reward sensitivity, punishment sensitivity, attentional focus. These are four parameters set. Okay, so yeah, where is it gone? So this the utility is between 0 and 1. Okay, so let's understand this here. Multiplicativity. Why am I struggling with this word? Multi multiplicatively, multiplicatively, multiplicatively. Multiplicatively, a multiplicatively scale transformation of V can be decomposed into two distinct parts. One over beta parameter minus again U utility of CT, that's time consumption made, plus the summation in the delta system where limit is infinite, delta T utility of consumption plus tau. I'm not sure what tau represents here. Maybe we will know here. Or actually one is written here. Let's quickly check out in the appendix maybe. It's given. Discussion. The term labeled delta system exhibits exponential discounting with discount factor delta that labeled beta system captures the extra weight given to immediate rewards. Based on previous research, McClure and Tanaka, we expected the impatient beta system to be related to the metabolic dopamine system and associated structure. So they're expecting this to be related to the dopamine system and associated structures. Okay, and why though? Humans share this limbic reward system with many other mammalian species, none of which respond to costs and benefits delayed more than a few minutes, except in a rigid, pre-programmed manner. Moreover, recent research finds that people with greater activation in these limbic reward regions in response to gaining losing money also place greater weight on immediate rewards relative to delayed rewards. Interesting. Hariri. Hariri. Why does this name sound familiar? Preference for immediate over delayed rewards associated with magnitude of ventral striatal activity. Okay, interesting. Additionally, we anticipated the delta component to be associated with prefrontal parietal. These regions have been implicated in planning and deliberation. Here we go. This is what we were talking about with respect to what Reddish is writing. Okay, interesting stuff. Damage to these areas in humans produces a pattern of short-sighted, non-deliberative behavior, termed reward dependency syndrome. Damage to these areas in humans produces a pattern of short-sighted, non-deliberative behavior, termed reward dependency syndrome. Not heard of this phrase before. Okay, interesting. So, reward dependency syndrome, constantly need rewards. I was just thinking what examples can be drawn. Hmm, interesting. Right, so that's paper number one. The guy's name again, Macuster, McClure, Samuel McClure. Okay, fantastic. We shall continue this tomorrow, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب